Hello, guys. Welcome to another exciting episode on the show, a podcast designed to help you start thinking differently and take control of your life. Yet again, it's another wonderful day. It's a great day on control or be controlled. And as always, and ever, and as always, as it will always be, I remain your host, Darlington. Today's guest is Carl Yorke, an actor whose career includes one of the most talked about and controversial films in cinema history, Cannibal Holocaust. Released in 1980, the film shocked audiences around the world with its graphic realism and went on to become one of the most debated movies ever made. It also pioneered the found footage style. It also pioneered the found footage style years before it became a mainstream genre. Carl, welcome to Control or Be Controlled.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so I would also like you to add a little bit to that introduction.
Well, I'm happy to be here. I'm concerned about anybody who wants to see this movie or does see this movie because it's it's a it's it's a particular kind of movie, and I I just saw a podcast on YouTube by a couple fellows who review horror movies who hated this movie so much that they said in their comments, don't watch this movie. So what I think is going to happen is anybody who sees that is going to say, now I have to see this movie. So if you don't know what Cannibal Holocaust is, it's the story of a documentary film crew led by me. I play a character named Alan Yates, and we go to the Amazon jungle to make a documentary about cannibals. And on the way through the jungle, we rape and pillage and murder and do all kinds of stuff that we just feel like doing. And then, and it's all in the service of getting footage. So we set up various situations like stuffing a bunch of the native people in a I want to call it a cabin. It's a hut, and then setting the hut on fire, and then having them run out so that we can shoot it, and eventually what happens is the local natives, the cannibals, get fed up with us and pick us off one by one and kill us and eat us. Meanwhile, there's a professor in New York who knows about our project, and when we don't come back, he comes looking for us. So he goes through the jungle, raping, pillaging, murdering, and then he finds our skeletons mostly, and he finds all the film we shot, and he brings it back and he stitches it together, and that's when you get to see the part that I'm in. So this format was the foundation of another movie called The Blair Witch Project. Cannibal Holocaust was shot in 1979 on the Amazon River. I don't know. I didn't see Blair Witch Project, but it came along quite a few years later. It was also the inspiration for a movie called The Green Inferno, because the documentary that my character is making is called The Green Inferno. So I forget who that director is. He made a movie called The Green Inferno, which is another movie I haven't seen. So that's what we're talking about today.
All right, thank you so much, Carl. So I have some questions here for you, and I would like us to get into them. Carl, before we talk about Cannibal Holocaust, tell us about your family's long history in the entertainment industry. How did growing up around Hollywood influenced your decision to become an actor?
My great-grandfather was an actor. He was born in 1861 in New York. He was a comedian, and he worked pretty much nonstop from 1885 till 1932. And he did vaudeville and, the kind of musicals they were doing in those days. And then his son, my grandfather, was the head of publicity at 20th Century Fox during the golden years from the early to mid 30s up through the 50s. My father grew up in Hollywood and around Hollywood and didn't like it. He didn't like it. But he told me stories that fired my imagination, and he took us to the set of a movie called The Longest Day, which was shot in Paris in 1959 or 60. And it was on that set when I was 7 or 8 that I decided I wanted to be an actor. He, at that point, was in the military, and he was the liaison between Hollywood production and the Air Force. So if you needed the Air Force's cooperation to make a movie, you had to go through him. He did other things later, but I started out in grade school doing plays, and I did every play in high school. By the time I got to college, I was working professionally most of my time through college. Starting out in an improv company, improvisational theater in San Francisco. And then I did the resident show there of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I did that for over a year. And as soon as I graduated from college, I went on the road with that show. So I did 3 national tours of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and landed in New York City, where I wanted to be because I wanted to get training as an actor. And I did get training. I studied with Uta Hagen, who isn't well known today, but she was then. And I also took classes from various casting directors, and that's kind of how you get work, too. So one day, one of the casting directors I knew called me and said, it was a Friday afternoon, and he said, "Are you available?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "For like 3 weeks or a month?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Will you go to South America?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Get over to my office right now." So I said, "Well, who am I? What am I auditioning for?" He said, "Just get over here." So I ran across town and I got into his office, and there was an Italian man there with a picture of some other actor and my picture. And he looked at the two of them and he looked at my resume. He pretended to look at my resume. What he really wanted to know was, "What size shoes do you wear?" He asked me. And I said, 10 and a half. And he said, "Oh, okay. You wait in the other room. We have one more actor to talk to." Well, the circumstance was that they had hired 2 actors for the roles in this movie, Cannibal Holocaust. And at the airport, one of them quit, the one that had my role. But they had already bought the costumes for him. So the only instruction this man had, because he didn't have a script or anything like that, all he had was find somebody who looks kind of like this other guy and who wears the same size shoes. And that's how I got the job. So 4 years of high school, I was in every play. 4 years of college, working professionally the whole time. 3 national tours of Cuckoo's Nest. Over 200, probably 300 totally improvised shows. And then years of studying with top acting teachers. And it came down to, what size shoes did I wear? The irony there is when I got to the Amazon, the boots they had didn't fit me. So I got the job, basically on a false pretense, but nobody would have known that. And I brought my own boots, so it was cool. Does that answer the question? Did I answer the question that you wanted answered, or would you like to put a finer point on it?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you so much, Akri. So tell us, how did you become first involved with Cannibal Holocaust? And what attracted you to the project?
And what was the last part of that question?
So I said, what attracted you to the project?
Attracted at all. I had no idea what it was. I got on the plane. The only thing I knew was that we were flying to Bogota and that somebody was going to meet me there and that eventually we'd be down to the Amazon. What attracted me to it was a job. So when you're an actor and somebody offers you a job, the best thing you can do is say yes. A lot of people who don't understand how the business works, they'll see an actor in a movie that's not very good and say, "Why did that guy do that bad movie?" And because you take whatever work you can get. So when I got to the Amazon and they showed me the script, well, I'll tell you this. First of all, I knew this was going to be an adventure and it was going to be a good story. When we got there, down to the Amazon River in the little town there, they put me on a boat immediately that went up the Amazon about 40 minutes and then took a turn up into one of the tributaries that we went through the jungle for another 10 minutes or 15. And on the way on that tributary, I saw a dead monkey float by, and then I didn't know what that meant. I made up something about how maybe it fell in the river and got killed by a piranha. But then I saw a human leg float by, and then I was a little bit worried about what have I gotten myself into, because it was 1,900 miles from the Atlantic Ocean, deep, deep, deep in the jungle. We were on the border of Peru and Brazil in Colombia. And if there was a problem and I wanted to get away, there were only 2 airplanes a week in and out of this town. So we came around the corner and they put me in a shot right away. Ruggero, the director, just handed me a camera and he said, "Stand here and pretend like you're shooting." And there was a guy in a pit, and the circumstance was that he was the guide and he'd been bitten by a snake. And he said, "Quick, hack off my leg so that the poison doesn't get to my heart." And they hacked off his leg, and then he dies anyway. So I got there in time to hold the camera while we're shooting him dying. But the leg that they hacked off was that leg that I saw floating down the river. It was a prosthetic leg. So that was the beginning, and there were many challenges to come after that. What's your next question?
All right. Thank you so much, Ka. So what was it like working with director Ruggero Deodato? And what kind of filmmaker was he on set?
So the thing about Ruggero is he knew exactly what he was doing. So the people who hate this movie and think, there's something wrong with Ruggero, yeah, maybe there was. He knew. I want to say he trained with an Italian director named Rossellini. I think that's who he trained with. He was a very famous director, and Ruggero was actually the sort of mirror image of my character. So when he told me who my character was, he said I was a ruthless American documentary filmmaker, ruthless. And that's what Ruggero was. Now, I'd have had enough experience to see what level of a director Ruggero was at, because I worked with other kinds of directors who didn't know what they were doing. For instance, I worked on some Woody Allen movies when I was in New York, and when you got on the Woody Allen set, he he had it timed down to the minute. You know, my call would be like at 9:27 in the morning, and I'd be out of there by 11:51, and he knew exactly what he was doing every second. On the other hand, I worked on a couple of Francis Coppola movies, and one of them I was an extra for a week. I sat in a room and never got on the set because Francis didn't really know what he was doing. Anyway, Ruggero knew exactly what he was doing and exactly how to get it. And sometimes that meant he had to be really tough, maybe even cruel. And how do I say this? I'll say I wasn't afraid of Ruggero. There was a moment where I wondered if they were going to kill the actors. And that's when I kept all of my money and all of my passport and my plane ticket and all of that stuff. I kept that on me all the time. That was stupid because if they were going to kill me, they were going to, really, I didn't have any defense at all. But there came a time when he wanted me to do something that I didn't want to do. And I said that, and I told him I wouldn't do it. And so he rearranged things, the other actors didn't have that kind of leeway all the time. If they balked at something, he would berate them and really make them hurt. I'll put it that way, make them hurt. But in the end, I will say this. This movie was shot in 1979, and you and I are talking about it in 2026, which is, I'm pretty bad at this kind of math. 45 years later, 47 years later, it's a long time. And here we're still talking about it. And the reason we're still talking about it is because Ruggero knew exactly what he was doing. So I really appreciate him on that level, on the level of his skills as a filmmaker. The rest of it just kind of comes with the territory.
All right, thank you so much, Carl. The way you described Ruggero, look at someone I would like to work with you. So, Cannibal Holocaust remains one of the most controversial films ever made. At the time that the movie was being made, did you have any idea that the project was going to generate such an intense reaction?
We were making it. Okay, so when we were when I got on the plane and left the Amazon, I was almost positive that nobody would ever see this movie. I really expected nobody to ever see this movie. I thought, this is a bunch of crazy Italians. I had no idea. First of all, I'm not a horror movie fan. So I had no idea that there was a whole genre of horror movies called Mondo, which is a specific set of years that Italians like D'Argento and Ruggero and some others were making these kind of movies. So I didn't know that there was already an audience for this movie. I was sure. So I got back to New York, and I was working as a reader. I read books and scripts for movie companies and publishers, and I was working for United Artists, and I was walking down the hall one day, and one of the executives was like freaking out. He was like going, "Oh my God, I can't believe it." And I stuck my head in his office. I didn't know the guy. He goes, "You got to come and look at this. This is unbelievable." And I came and looked, and he was looking at production shots of Cannibal Holocaust. And he was like, "Can you believe this?" And I go, "Here, yes, no. Yeah, that's me." I pointed to me in one of the pictures. He goes, "No, yeah, that's you." And we both went, "Holy fuck," like that. So I'm sorry, I don't know if you want those kind of words on your thing, but here we go. United Artists, which is a major American distribution company, was going to distribute Cannibal Holocaust in America and all over the world. And I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. And then, of course, what happened was Ruggero was arrested and had to go to court and prove that he didn't kill the actors. And then it was banned all over the world. People who love this movie are people in the Netherlands, apparently, where anything goes, and the Japanese who love this kind of a movie, especially the ones where they kill the animals. So once it was banned, I thought, well, that's the end of that. I don't have to worry about that. 20 years later, literally 20 years later, a friend of mine in Hollywood sent me a copy that was, he had a dupe of a Dutch version of the movie. And I saw it for the first time 20 years later. And then 5 years after that, these guys from Grindhouse, Sage Stallone and Bob Murawski, they found me and they came and interviewed me for their DVD release in 2005 and the 25th anniversary. And then they said, and now we want to take you to some horror movie conventions where you can meet your fans. And I was aghast. I was like, how can I have fans? This was banned everywhere. Well, of course, once it's banned, everybody has to see it. So I had no idea that there were these fans, hundreds, thousands of fans. I've met thousands of them now because I go to horror movie conventions, sometimes 2, 3, 4 a year. I'm going to 2 more this year, 3, one in Buffalo and one in Germany. So did I have any idea it was going to be this well known? Absolutely not. I expected that it would just fade away.
Okay.
In my case, I'm trying to think about this from the other people who were in the movie, in my part of the movie. How could any of us have agreed to make this movie? Well, I kind of started out talking about what it's like to be an actor. And you say yes. You say yes to everything. Because you don't know when is the last offer coming in. So in my case, I had no idea what I was signing up for. The title is pretty something. But it doesn't tell you what's happening. But also, I think about Perry, who's the blonde guy. He got to read the script before he went down there. And I don't know if he knew that they were actually going to kill animals in this movie. And like I said before, once you're down there and once you're in it and you're 1,900 miles from the Atlantic Ocean, there's one boat a week that comes up from Manaus. There's 2 planes a week out of there. The idea that you're going to somehow say, I'm out of here, I'm not doing this, it did cross my mind. It crossed, in fact, I discussed it with Perry. I discussed it with Francesca, who played my girlfriend. Luca didn't speak much English. I don't know what he was thinking. So the question of how can we sign up to go ahead and do a movie like this? I didn't sign up to go ahead and do a movie like this. I didn't have any idea what this movie was going to be. I read the script the first night I got down there. That was, my mistake was I read the script while I was eating dinner. But, all I was looking for was, what are they going to want me to do? And then you rationalize in your mind how they're going to get that done. So, for instance, I'll give you the prime example of how did I sign up for this. Because I have some self-esteem, because I have a scope of knowledge of how things work. So when Ruggero told me to shoot this pig right at the beginning of the scene, I said, so what does that mean? Am I going to, you want me to go bang? How does that work? He goes, no, you're going to have live ammunition in your rifle and you'll kill this pig. And I said, I'm not going to do that. And he said, okay, Luca, you come over here and you shoot the pig. And then we go on with the scene. So I did what I signed up for. The one scene I didn't want to do, really, was when we raped that little girl. But since we weren't really raping her, it was really just acting, you know? You do a lot of stuff you don't want to do when you're an actor. In fact, that's the job. The job is you are like everybody else. You have you have a behavior that you want to show other people that you're a good person. And then as an actor, your character does things that are against your own moral code, but it's a movie. So you're not actually doing it. You're just, representing that kind of a person who would do it. Killing the animals was a complete surprise to me. By the time I got there, they had already killed the turtle, so I didn't have to see any of that, which I'm really grateful for, because I watched this movie. As soon as I get to the turtle, I'm like, I can't watch anymore. So anyhow, yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Carl, for that wonderful answer. So, do you think Cannibal Holocaust affected your acting career for better, for worse, or in ways that you never ever expected?
Here's the only effect it had, because it was banned for so long, and my acting career didn't last that much longer. I went into the other side of the business. I ran a producer's office in Hollywood for years. I worked at one of the biggest agencies in Hollywood as a staff reader. That's after I did a couple of years on the TV show and a bunch of other stuff. But anyhow, by the time this became generally known, this movie, I was way, 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 way out of the acting thing. I'll tell you one way it affected my career. In 1990, maybe. Yeah, I think that's when I was working at 20th Century Fox. I had an office there, and the casting director for a movie called Jack the Bear was in the office next door, and she wanted me to audition for her movie. We became a little bit friendly. And I said, no, I haven't done that in a long time. I am not an actor anymore. And her assistant came over and said, Mary says, you're going to audition Tuesday at 3:00, and I need a picture and a resume. So I was like, once you're an actor and they give you a shot at something, you can't, it's so hard to turn it down. So I went to the audition, but I hadn't worked for 9 years as an actor. So my headshot was 9 years old. I didn't put a resume on it because everything was so old. And then the director, Marshall Herskovitz, he looked at my picture and turned it over and said, there's no resume on here. Well, I told you I'd done years and years of in an improv company, so I just improvised. I said, my resume is full of lies, and I just decided I'll just lie right to your face. And he laughed, and he said, okay, what have you done? I said, well, let's see. I did 100 performances of Hamlet as Hamlet on Broadway. I just finished that. He said, yeah, I saw that. Well, that was a lie. And then he said, what else have you done? And I thought, what is it he hears all the time? And I said, well, I've done a lot of movies, but none of them have been released yet. And he actually finished the sentence with me, which I thought was delightful. Then he said, what have you actually done? And I said, okay, well, I starred in a movie called Cannibal Holocaust. And he looked at me and said, let's just do the audition, because he thought that was a lie too. So that was the only time it came up. Other than that, no, it never had any effect at all. And I thank you for having me. I have another appointment right now